If you think you know what hell looks like, you're wrong. Subscribe now, hit that notification bell, and brace yourself, because what I'm about to show you will haunt your dreams forever. The call came in at 2:47 a.m. on a frozen February morning in 2019. Florence, Colorado. A town so small that most Americans couldn't find it on a map, yet it housed the most dangerous men in the country. ADX Florence, the supermax prison where nightmares go to die, where terrorists, cartel kingpins, and serial killers spend 23 hours a day in concrete tombs, alone with their demons. But that night, something impossible happened. Special Agent Rachel Moreno of the FBI's Critical Incident Response Group remembers the exact moment her phone vibrated on the nightstand. She was in Denver, 3 hours north, finishing a completely unrelated case involving a white-collar fraud ring. The voice on the other end belonged to Warden Marcus Kellerman, and he was whispering. "We have a situation," he said, his words clipped and careful. "You need to get here.
Now.
Tell no one." Rachel had worked with Kellerman before. The man was a 20-year veteran of the federal prison system, built like a brick wall, with a voice that could stop riots. She had never heard fear in his tone until that moment. By the time she arrived at the prison, the sun was still hours from rising. The facility loomed against the black Colorado sky like a concrete fortress, ringed with razor wire and surveillance towers. Armed guards met her at the outer gate, their faces pale and tight. They didn't speak as they escorted her through 3 separate security checkpoints, each one more intense than the last. Kellerman was waiting in his office, pacing. His shirt was untucked, his tie loosened. A man who prided himself on military precision was unraveling. "Tell me what happened," Rachel demanded. He handed her a tablet. On the screen was security footage from Range 13, one of the most isolated sections of the prison. The timestamp read 11:34 p.m. The hallway was empty, bathed in harsh fluorescent light. Then, at 11:41 p.m., a figure appeared. Rachel leaned closer. The man was dressed in an orange jumpsuit, walking slowly, deliberately. His hands were behind his back as if cuffed, but there were no guards with him. He stopped in front of cell 142, turned to face the camera, and smiled. "Who is that?" Rachel asked. "Marcus Hale," Kellerman said, and the name hit Rachel like a freight train. Marcus Hale, the architect. A former military intelligence officer turned contract killer who had murdered 17 people across 4 countries before his capture in 2011. His methods were surgical, calculated, and utterly ruthless. He had been sentenced to life without parole and sent to ADX Florence specifically because of his genius-level IQ and history of manipulation. "He's in Range 13?" Rachel asked. "He was," Kellerman said. "Cell 106. Maximum security. Reinforced steel door. 24-hour surveillance. No human contact except controlled movements every 72 hours. Rachel's blood went cold. "Was." Kellerman nodded toward the screen. The footage continued. Marcus Hale stood in front of cell 142 for exactly 30 seconds, then walked back the way he came. At 11:43 p.m., he disappeared off camera. "When we checked cell 106 at midnight," Kellerman said, his voice shaking, "he was inside. Asleep. Like nothing had happened." Rachel rewound the footage, watched it again. "This doesn't make sense. How did he get out of his cell? Where are the guards?" "That's the problem," Kellerman said. "According to the logs, no one opened his cell. The electronic locks show no activity. The guards on duty swear they never left their stations. But here's the part that made me call you." He pulled up another screen. Cell 142. The cell Marcus had stopped in front of. "Cell 142 has been empty for 6 months, Kellerman explained. "We've been renovating that section. No inmate has been housed there since August." Rachel felt her pulse quicken. "So why did he go there?" Kellerman's jaw tightened. "At 6 a.m. this morning, during routine inspection, one of my guards opened cell 142 to check the renovation progress." He paused, and Rachel could see the haunted look in his eyes. There was a message, carved into the concrete wall with something sharp. "Fresh." The concrete dust was still on the floor. What did it say? Kellerman turned the tablet toward her. The photograph showed a prison cell, empty except for crude letters gouged deep into the gray wall. She knows where they're buried. Rachel stared at the words, her mind racing. Who knows? Who is she? We have no idea, Kellerman admitted. But here's what I haven't told you yet. We pulled Marcus Hale from his cell an hour ago for questioning. We needed to know how he got out, how he carved that message. And he wouldn't speak. Just sat there, staring at the table. But when we mentioned the message, he laughed. Then he said 5 words before refusing to say anything else. Rachel waited, her stomach twisting. He said, "Ask the warden's daughter." The room went silent. Kellerman's face had gone white. "I don't have a daughter," he whispered. "I've never been married. Never had children." But when they pulled Marcus Hale's incoming mail records from the past 6 months, searching for any connection, any clue to what he meant, they found something that made Rachel's blood turn to ice. 17 letters. All from the same sender. A woman named Claire Kellerman. Same last name as the warden. But when they opened the locked evidence room where the letters were stored, searching for answers, they found the box empty. Every single letter was gone. And in their place was a single photograph. A Polaroid. Recent. It showed a woman, bound and gagged, sitting in what looked like a basement. Behind her, barely visible in the shadows, were rows of black plastic bags. But when they opened the locked basement door of the prison's old administrative building, a section that had been sealed off for renovations, what they found changed everything. The basement of the old administrative building hadn't been opened in 8 months. The door was rusted, the lock corroded with age. When the maintenance supervisor finally forced it open, the smell hit them first. Damp concrete, mildew, and something else. Something chemical and sharp that burned the back of the throat. Rachel descended the stairs with her flashlight cutting through the darkness, Kellerman close behind her, and 4 armed guards forming a perimeter. The beam of light swept across the room, revealing exactly what they feared they would find. The basement was empty. Completely empty. No woman. No black plastic bags. Just bare concrete walls, exposed pipes, and decades of dust. But on the far wall, someone had set up a makeshift darkroom. Developing trays lined a rusted metal shelf. Red light bulbs hung from exposed wiring. And pinned to a corkboard were dozens of photographs. All Polaroids. All recently developed. Rachel moved closer, her heart hammering. The first photograph showed the entrance to ADX Florence at sunset. The second showed Warden Kellerman leaving the facility, climbing into his car. The third showed Kellerman's house, a modest ranch-style home on the outskirts of Florence. Then the photographs became more disturbing. Kellerman grocery shopping. Kellerman at a diner, eating breakfast alone. Kellerman at a cemetery, standing before a grave with wilted flowers in his hand. "Someone's been following you," Rachel said quietly. "For months." Kellerman's face had drained of all color. He reached out, his hand trembling, and touched one of the photographs. "That's my mother's grave. I visit every Sunday." "How did they?" "Keep looking," Rachel interrupted, scanning the rest of the board. The pattern shifted. New photographs appeared. A younger woman, maybe late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She was captured in various locations: a coffee shop in Denver, a university library, walking along a tree-lined street. In several photos, she was looking directly at the camera, as if she knew she was being watched. "Do you recognize her?" Rachel asked. Kellerman stared at the images, his confusion evident. "Never seen her before in my life." But Rachel had. Something about the woman's face triggered a memory. She pulled out her phone, opened her FBI database, and started searching. It took less than 3 minutes to find the match. Claire Kellerman, age 27. Graduate student at the University of Colorado, Denver, studying criminal psychology. Born in Portland, Oregon. Parents, Robert and Susan Kellerman, both deceased. Killed in a home invasion in 2008 when Claire was 11 years old. And there it was. The connection that made Rachel's stomach drop. "Thomas," she said carefully, "did you have a brother?" Kellerman turned to her, his face pale. "Robert." He died 15 years ago. We weren't close. He moved to Oregon after our mother got sick, married some woman I never met. I didn't even go to the funeral. Why? Rachel showed him the screen. Because Claire Kellerman is your niece, Robert's daughter. And according to this, both her parents were murdered by a home invasion crew that was never caught. The warden swayed slightly, gripping the edge of the shelf for support. I didn't know Robert had a child. We hadn't spoken in years. After he left, we just lost touch. Well, she knows about you, Rachel said, pointing at the wall. And someone's been photographing both of you. The question is why? One of the guards called out from the corner of the basement. Agent Moreno, you need to see this. Behind a stack of old filing cabinets, they found another corkboard. This one was covered in newspaper clippings, printed articles, and handwritten notes. All of them related to one subject, Marcus Hale. Rachel's eyes scanned the collection. Details of his murders. Court transcripts. Psychological evaluations. But what caught her attention was a handwritten timeline, meticulously crafted, with red string connecting various points. The timeline started in 2007. A family murdered in Portland, Oregon. Robert and Susan Kellerman. The case went cold. No suspects. No arrests. Then it jumped to 2008. Another family. Different state. Similar method. Execution-style killings, staged to look like a robbery. Another family. Same pattern. The timeline continued through 2011, documenting 7 different family murders across the western United States. All unsolved. All with the same signature. Professional, clean, no evidence left behind. And then, in 2011, Marcus Hale was arrested. But not for these murders. He was caught for different contract killings, crimes he had committed internationally. Crimes with clear evidence, clear victims, clear motives. At the bottom of the timeline, written in bold red marker, were 4 words. He didn't work alone. Rachel felt the pieces shifting in her mind, fragments of a larger picture beginning to emerge. Marcus Hale was a contract killer. He worked for money. Someone hired him to kill these families. Someone who's still out there. Claire, Kellerman whispered. She's been investigating her parents' murder. She thinks Marcus knows who hired him. And she's been writing to him, Rachel added. 17 letters in 6 months. She's been communicating with a convicted killer, trying to extract information. But that didn't explain the impossible footage. It didn't explain how Marcus had escaped his cell, carved a message into an empty room, and returned without anyone noticing. Rachel pulled out her phone and called the FBI's tech division. I need you to analyze security footage from ADX Florence. Range 13. Last night between 11:30 p.m. and midnight. I'm sending it now. Look for digital manipulation, deepfakes, anything that suggests tampering. While she waited, she examined the darkroom more carefully. The developing chemicals were fresh, recently used. Whoever had set this up had been here within the past week. Her phone buzzed. The tech analyst's voice was tight with urgency. Agent Moreno, we've analyzed the footage. It's authentic. No digital manipulation. No editing. That's real-time surveillance. That's impossible, Rachel said. The cell doors are electronically locked. There's no way. Actually, the analyst interrupted. There is. We found something. At 11:38 p.m., there's a 3-second power fluctuation in range 13. It's barely noticeable, like a hiccup in the system. But during those 3 seconds, the electronic locks reset to factory default. Rachel's mind raced. Someone hacked the system. Not remotely, the analyst clarified. This had to be done from inside the facility. Someone with physical access to the mainframe. Someone who knew exactly when to trigger the fluctuation and how long Marcus needed to get out and back. Rachel turned to Kellerman. Who has access to your security mainframe? Only senior staff, he said. Me, my deputy warden, head of security, and the IT director. I need their files. Now. And I need Marcus Hale brought to an interrogation room. If someone helped him escape his cell, he's going to tell me why. But when the guards went to retrieve Marcus Hale from his cell 15 minutes later, They found something that sent the entire prison into lockdown. The cell was empty. The door was sealed. The electronic logs showed no activity. But on the concrete floor, written in what appeared to be blood, was a message. Basement. Governor's mansion. Midnight. Come alone or she dies. And beneath it, a single Polaroid photograph. Recent. Time-stamped from 30 minutes ago. It showed Claire Kellerman, bound to a chair in a dark room, terror in her eyes. Standing behind her, his hand on her shoulder, was Marcus Hale, smiling at the camera. But Marcus Hale was supposed to be in his cell, locked down. Impossible to escape. Rachel grabbed Kellerman's arm. The governor's mansion. Where is it? 20 miles north. It's been abandoned for years, scheduled for demolition. Rachel checked her watch. 9:47 p.m. They had just over 2 hours. But as they raced toward the exit, Rachel's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just 3 words that made her blood run cold. Check Hale's cell. When they returned to Range 13 and looked inside Cell 106 through the observation window, they found Marcus Hale, exactly where he was supposed to be. Sitting on his bunk, reading a book, completely calm. He looked up at the camera and waved. Rachel's hands shook as she stared at the monitor. If Marcus was in his cell, then who was in the photograph with Claire? Rachel's mind fractured into 1,000 questions as she stared at Marcus Hale through the observation window. He sat motionless, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth, as if he were waiting for her to figure out a puzzle he'd already solved. "Open it," Rachel commanded. The guards exchanged nervous glances. "Agent Moreno, protocol states. Open the damn cell. Now." The electronic lock disengaged with a metallic click. 2 guards entered first, weapons drawn, but Marcus didn't move. He simply looked up from his book, his eyes settling on Rachel with an unsettling familiarity. "Agent Moreno," he said, his voice smooth and measured. "I've been expecting you, though I thought it would take you a bit longer to find the darkroom. I'm almost disappointed." Rachel stepped into the cell, her hand resting on her sidearm. "Where is Claire Kellerman?" Marcus closed his book carefully, marking his place. "That depends entirely on which Claire Kellerman you're asking about. The one in the photograph? Or the one who's been writing to me? Stop playing games. A woman's life is at stake." "Is it?" Marcus tilted his head. "Or is that precisely what someone wants you to believe? Tell me, Agent, when you found that darkroom, did you notice anything peculiar about the photographs?" Rachel's pulse quickened. She had noticed something. The lighting in the photos of Claire had been inconsistent. Professional in some shots, amateur in others. Almost as if they'd been taken by different people. "Who helped you escape your cell last night?" Rachel demanded. Marcus laughed, a cold sound that echoed off the concrete walls. "I didn't escape, Agent. I haven't left this cell in 3 years except for controlled movements. What you saw on that footage was exactly what someone wanted you to see. A ghost. A distraction. The power fluctuation was real. The security footage was authentic." "Yes," Marcus agreed. "But ask yourself this. Why would I carve a message in an empty cell when I could simply tell you what I know? Why leave a trail of breadcrumbs unless the point was to lead you somewhere specific?" Kellerman pushed past the guards, his face flushed with anger. "Enough riddles. My niece is missing. If you know where she is—" "Your niece," Marcus interrupted, "is considerably more resourceful than you give her credit for. She's been planning this for 8 years, ever since she discovered who really killed her parents." The temperature in the cell seemed to drop 10 degrees. "You killed them," Kellerman said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I did," Marcus confirmed without hesitation. "Along with 6 other families between 2007 and 2011. All contract work. All paid in advance. All executed perfectly. Until I was caught for entirely different crimes and sent here to rot." Rachel stepped closer. "Who hired you?" That's the question Claire's been asking in her letters. 17 of them, each one more desperate than the last. She wanted names. Proof. Evidence that would lead her to the person who ordered her parents' execution. Marcus paused, his eyes gleaming. I gave her everything she asked for. In my last letter. We found the evidence room empty, Rachel said. Someone took the letters. Not someone, Marcus corrected. Claire herself. She has security clearance as a doctoral researcher studying criminal psychology. She's been consulting with the Bureau for 2 years. She used that access to walk right into this facility 6 days ago, retrieve the letters, and walk out again. Your own security footage will confirm it. Rachel's mind reeled. She pulled out her phone and called the FBI field office in Denver. I need you to pull visitor logs for ADX Florence. Last 2 weeks. Look for anyone named Claire Kellerman or any consultants from the University of Colorado. While she waited, Marcus continued. The person who hired me to kill those families wasn't some distant criminal mastermind. It was someone close. Someone trusted. Someone who had access to information about federal witnesses in protective custody. Rachel's blood went cold. The families weren't random targets. No, Marcus confirmed. They were witnesses. People who had testified against a major organized crime syndicate in the late 1990s. People who were supposed to be protected by the U.S. Marshal Service. People whose locations were known only to a handful of federal agents. Kellerman staggered backward. That's impossible. The Marshal Service doesn't leak witness locations. They don't, Marcus agreed. Unless someone on the inside is feeding information to the highest bidder. Someone who's been doing it for decades. Someone who's still active. Rachel's phone buzzed. The field office analyst's voice was urgent. Agent Moreno, we found the entry. Claire Kellerman visited ADX Florence 6 days ago as part of a doctoral research project. She was escorted through the facility by Deputy Warden Frank Messner. She had access to the evidence room for approximately 45 minutes. Deputy Warden Frank Messner. Rachel's mind flashed back to Kellerman's words earlier. Only senior staff have access to the security mainframe. Me, my deputy warden, head of security, and the IT director. Where is Messner right now? Rachel demanded, looking at Kellerman. The warden's face went pale. He called in sick this morning. Said he had the flu. I haven't heard from him since. Marcus leaned back against the wall, his expression almost satisfied. Now you're beginning to understand. Frank Messner has been the leak for 23 years. He started as a U.S. Marshal, feeding witness locations to the Verdugo cartel. When the heat got too intense, he transferred to the Bureau of Prisons, where he could keep tabs on anyone who might eventually talk. He's the one who made sure I ended up here, in his facility, where he could control the narrative. And Claire figured this out, Rachel said. She did. Through my letters, she traced the pattern. She realized that every family killed had one thing in common. They'd all been relocated by the U.S. Marshal Service in the Denver region. And every relocation had been processed through Frank Messner's office. Rachel's hands trembled as she pulled up Messner's personnel file. 23 years of service. Impeccable record. Decorated officer. And assigned to the Denver region from 1998 to 2009. The exact time frame of the murders. The photograph, Rachel said. The one showing Claire with someone who looks like you. That was Messner, wasn't it? He used the darkroom to create the image, to frame you, to make us think you'd escaped. Close, Marcus said. But you're missing the final piece. Claire didn't send you on a wild goose chase to the governor's mansion by accident. She knew you'd figure out the truth about Messner. She knew you'd realize he was the one who helped stage my escape last night using his access to the mainframe. She wanted him to think he was still in control. She wanted him to believe he was framing me successfully. Why? Kellerman demanded. Because, Marcus said quietly, the governor's mansion isn't abandoned. It's where Messner has been living under a false identity for the past 3 years, preparing for retirement. It's where he's been storing evidence of every contract he ever brokered. And it's where Claire is right now, with a camera, a warrant she obtained through her FBI contacts, and enough documentation to bury him forever. Rachel's phone exploded with incoming calls. The first was from the FBI's Denver field office. Agent Moreno, we have eyes on the governor's mansion. Subject Claire Kellerman is exiting the property with multiple evidence boxes. She's requesting immediate backup. Says she has recordings of Deputy Warden Frank Messner confessing to 23 years of witness tampering and contract facilitation. The second call was from Colorado State Police. We have Frank Messner in custody. He was attempting to flee to Mexico. He's asking for a deal. Says he'll give up everyone. The Verdugo cartel, corrupt marshals, dirty prison officials. Everything. Rachel looked at Marcus Hale, who was smiling now, genuinely amused. You orchestrated all of this, she said. From inside a cell. You manipulated Claire, fed her just enough information to lead her to Messner, knowing she'd do exactly what you wanted. I gave her the truth, Marcus corrected. What she did with it was entirely her choice. Though I will admit, I found a certain poetry in using the system that imprisoned me to bring down the man who profited from my crimes. Why? Rachel asked. Why help her? You killed her parents. Marcus stood slowly, his eyes hard. Because Frank Messner made a promise. He said if I took the fall for the international contracts, kept my mouth shut about the domestic work, he'd make sure I got a comfortable prison assignment. Instead, he buried me in ADX Florence, in solitary confinement, for the rest of my life. I don't appreciate broken promises. 3 months later, Rachel sat in a federal courtroom and watched Frank Messner receive 6 consecutive life sentences. The investigation had uncovered a corruption network spanning 3 decades, implicating 14 federal agents, and leading to the exoneration of 5 people wrongly convicted based on Messner's fabricated evidence. Claire Kellerman testified with quiet dignity, her mother's necklace around her throat, her father's watch on her wrist. She never looked at Marcus Hale, who watched from a remote video link, his face impassive. When it was over, Rachel visited ADX Florence one final time. She stood outside cell 106 and looked at Marcus through the observation window. She got justice, Rachel said through the intercom. You helped her get closure. Marcus looked up from his book. Did I? Or did I simply remind her that monsters come in many forms? Some wear orange jumpsuits. Others wear badges. Rachel left without responding, but his words followed her into the cold Colorado night. As she drove away from the prison, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Just a photograph. A Polaroid. It showed a man in a suit, walking into a federal building in Washington, D.C. The timestamp was from that morning. The man's face was partially obscured, but Rachel recognized the building. FBI headquarters. Beneath the photo, a single line of text. Ready for the next one? Rachel pulled over, her hands shaking. She looked back at ADX Florence in her rearview mirror, that concrete fortress rising against the mountains. Inside cell 106, Marcus Hale turned a page in his book and smiled. Because some monsters don't need to leave their cages to destroy the world outside. They just need someone desperate enough to open the right doors. And in the darkness of the Colorado night, 17 more letters sat waiting in a post office box, each one addressed to a different inmate, each one containing a carefully crafted truth. The architect was building something new. And this time no prison could contain it.